So this is the first. It's not the first piece of writing, but it's like first piece of writing since the last one 3 months ago, and it's a recap. And it should be fairly easy because the research is pretty much my lived experience so far. So this is a weird story actually because usually the characters are not, they're not super defined or important compared to the research within the stories that's embedded within. I'm going to try and be objective though. I don't think I'm going to name myself. So I'm just going to go. So pretty much so much has happened to me in the past 3 months that it's good to have this documentation to refer to. This is my end of detention notice. There's probably actually this is the mandatory quarantine information. I don't know if you're meant to keep all this stuff. This is like a lot of documentation. I wanted to keep it as record because the language was just really terrible in these things. It's very authoritarian. I'm not going to say authoritarian because, there's many freedoms afforded to Australians, even if they are officially in detention. Although, having said that, we're not as accommodating to refugees in detention. Such a strange country, Australia. Not such a strange country, such a strange way of governing. Just can't get away from this sort of European settlement mentality. It's been a long time. Drop it. So I think what I wanted in here, I might start from when when you're allowed to leave. I loved this. I say I loved it. I just thought it was so bonkers. This was how to order stuff from the supermarket if you're in hotel quarantine. It's really complicated. These are all the steps you have to take to order food from the supermarket. So there's currently an inquiry going on into hotel quarantine and the system that was enacted in Victoria, which has been provoked by the fact that it didn't seem to have worked, that there has been a rise in COVID-19 cases since the hotel quarantine thing was instigated, mostly coming from staff not being trained or having the right PPE equipment. So for me, that's the guys that were outside the hotel door for the 2 weeks that I was inside. I didn't go out for any exercise. Speaking to other... Where should I start? So the detainees, which is the official, name for what we were, there was a Facebook group set up by the hotel, which I thought was weirdly accommodating of them. Maybe they thought if they didn't do it, then somebody else would do it. I don't know. And much as I just really don't like Facebook, it was... This is annoying, this grey box on the side here. It was a place where you could ask people questions like, have you been been out for exercise? Have you tried to order this? Have you tried this? Have you done that? It's really interesting, such a mix of reactions. I think it felt like it was evenly split down the middle of people that were just like, yeah, we're doing this because it's the best thing to do for the whole of the country, and go Australia, woo, let's lock everyone up in hotels, it's great. And half of people that were just like, this is wrong, this is broken. We're going nuts. There was someone who said that they had. Oh, that was right. So the cleaning stuff, there wasn't any cleaning stuff allowed in to the room. So however the room was when you moved in, like you just had to try and keep it tidy. Don't spill anything because no one's going to come in and clean it up. And I think you could borrow like a vacuum cleaner or something. And then it was like, well, are they going to disinfect the vacuum cleaners? Like, just seemed a bit not good. They did give you extra linen, so you could change the bedding a few times if you wanted to. Um, yeah, that was right. On the Facebook group, the cleaning staff offered to show you how to make a bed according to hotel regulations. You know, to which one of the other detainees, as I'm going to refer to them, or refer to us as, said that it was too late to watch the video because they'd already cut holes in the sheets and ran around pretending they were ghosts to amuse themselves. Ooh, quarantine humor. Yeah. Yeah, so, gosh, I can tell stories better than I can write them, probably. But then they're probably not as accurate than if I write them. It's an interesting conundrum. Um, yeah, so you asked about what the exercise was like, and the hotel I was staying at, it wasn't wasn't one of the worst ones in terms of quality, but it was a bit of a shabby old hotel anyway. It's like a shabby old luxury hotel, whatever. Just things hadn't been updated and were just a bit like unkempt. Um, and on the ground floor was this shopping mall that was all closed in, and like they renovated it, but it hadn't really worked. There was a Debenhams in the basement that closed down because Debenhams English department store was just not doing well. So it was sort of half the stores were vacant. It used to really annoy me, this shopping mall, because they did a weird thing with the escalators where they try and sort of trap you on the upper floors. So you could go up, but then to get down, you'd have to like go all the way past all the shops down to the end of the floor and then get the escalators down again. Anyway, the exercise, according to other detainees written on the Facebook group, was that a security guard would come and pick you up from your room and take you down to the shopping mall. And I think there was an area where the part of the food court had closed down because the tenants had moved out. So they just sort of took you down there. So you didn't really get to go outside the building, and you were sort of just stuck with the security guard just for like 10-15 minutes. Just, I don't know if you're even allowed to sort of talk to them, or because you would have to be at a distance or whatever. It sounded really it sounded more depressing than staying in. At least if in the room, like, I don't know, can make your own fun. Yeah. So I didn't do the exercise thing. Um this is interesting, actually. I'm just going through all the paperwork. This was a list to get. So my partner sent in a care package. He wasn't allowed to actually come and visit or anything himself, so but he could like put together a package and then have it sent to the hotel, and then the hotel would do some magic, wave a magic wand over it, and then it'd be okay for me to have to go into. So in order to have this package delivered, you had to write like a contents list. So that was some of the things. I can't actually read it because it's backwards. Multivitamin, shampoo, body wash, moisturizer, hydrating eye drops, because I was like paranoid about just being constantly in air conditioning because there was no outdoor there was no window you could open or anything. It just was this constant air conditioning blowing on you for like 2 weeks nonstop. So I asked for some eye drops. And we had this just doesn't sound like it was that traumatic at all, but yeah, there was a small humidifier that my partner dropped off. Underwear, soft toys, adapter, coffee sachets, chocolate, nuts, seasoning, which is very khaki, cordial water, bar of soap. It's not a lot actually, but it was really lovely to receive. It really, I mean, the stay was awful, but it was slightly less awful because of that. What else have I got here? The hotel did a quiz where you could win like a chance to order some food that wasn't pre-prepared. So you actually had some choice. I did not participate. Oh, and then they did another quiz. What I want to find is... See, there's the end of detention. We got a detention notice when we first arrived, and then the day before we got an end of detention notice. And I want to find the advice for leaving. I thought it was in there, but I feel like it was sent separately. Now there's the original detention notice. So that's what you got on arrival. And I love that it's signed by authorizing officer was Dr. Annelies van Diemen. So Van Diemen's Land was one of the first colonial names for Tasmania, because it was, I guess, occupied. I don't know enough about Van Diemen. I just know that they were a prominent during the colonization of Australia. They were a prominent name. Weirdly, she did like this anti-colonization tweet comparing COVID to colonizers and the devastating effect they had on the indigenous population of Australia. So it was such a weird tweet. Like it was a good tweet. I agreed with it. Like it made sense, but it came from, the person putting actually, she's putting people in detention. I mean, that's his signature on the back there. And then she's talking about how the colonization of Australia was detrimental to Indigenous Australians. That's so weird. Glad I kept that though. You can tell that it was organised by a government department because nothing was ever said simply. Everything was like endless triplicate. Not even triplicate. Oh, this was about the exit process. Oh, this was just... You cannot arrange for family or friends to collect you from this hotel. The government will arrange transport for you from the hotel. You had to book a slot. Yeah, and then security would come and escort you from the room. Put you in an Uber. Was it an Uber or a taxi? And the taxi driver would just be like, where do you want to go? You give him your address and could be anywhere. So weird. It's like very performative, the whole hotel quarantine thing. So much threatening language, more notices. Weird that so many people were so complacent, yet they still had this like super threatening language that they were using for everything. I think That's not some. Is that something from Hotel Quarantine? No, that's something else. Let me just see if this has it, because this is what I want to incorporate into the story. I want to try and pull myself out of it as much as possible, and just use some of this official language. What happened? What should I do? Oh man, have I not kept the exit information? I thought I kept everything. This was funny, health and well-being, because it was kind of. I feel like it was kind of obscured by the state government, but there was a suicide in one of the hotels because somebody couldn't deal with it. Well, I'm not going to assume what the story is because the story never really became clear. It was mentioned, the word suicide was never mentioned, but it was mentioned that somebody had died, and then shortly afterwards they started offering mental health services to people in quarantine. And doing things like this, like giving you a sheet full of ways to essentially not commit suicide and make the government look bad. Keep active. Stay connected. It's just funny, like it's like regulations on how to stay sane. So weird. So that's a lot of stuff. That's a story just there. I feel like there's probably a novel or something in the past 3 months. Because if you saw the little video I did on Instagram, shortly after being released from hotel quarantine, I fell ill with. I didn't say what it was called in the Instagram video, but that's it there. Autoimmune hemolytic anemia. So this was this was one of the nurses at the hospital where pretty much I was in the hematology ward, and it's a really new, shiny, very modern space age sort of ward, but it's also super isolated because a lot of the patients, they have a lot of long-term patients that are there for treatments that might go for weeks or months, and most people in there, I would say, have some sort of immune deficiency or are susceptible to allergens, and yeah, that it's weird. I feel like pre-COVID, it was probably a very friendly ward where visitors were allowed often, as long as like you weren't bringing anything weird in that people might be allergic to or something like that. With COVID, visitors were restricted to like an hour, although yeah, that could be stretched a bit sometimes. I was a special case because I was so ill when I was taken in there. I had been home. I had collapsed at home. Pretty much, I had no hemoglobin. Like I had like barely any red blood cells. Yeah. But while I was in there, I'm losing the track. It was a very confusing time. There's a few days where I'm not really sure what days were what, because there were days of just sort of having endless blood tests and not knowing if it was day or night, and not sleeping, but not really, just really odd times. I would say it took them probably a week to work out exactly what it was that was wrong with me. And in that meantime, I had like every test available. I'm not complaining about any of this because I feel like I was really well looked after in a way that a lot of people I had access to healthcare that a lot of people would not, purely because I was in Melbourne and Australian, had an Australian passport, and a Medicare card. It just meant I had access to so much amazing technology and people and knowledge, and oh my goodness, it felt really, I don't know, I felt really guilty that I had this thing that just sort of came and went, and yet took so much resource to sort of address. So yeah, had every test under the sun, had bone marrow, had CT scans, all this stuff, super interesting. CT, so interesting that they give you stuff to drink, and then this massive, huge body scanner traces this liquid through your body as it moves. so weird. But yeah, when they just started figuring out started giving my condition a name, I asked the nurse to write them down. She did so on this bit of just hand towel. This is a very exciting piece of paper because I could start to sort of put a name to what I had, which was this. It was maybe this, and it was possibly that, although that was ruled out really quickly. Yeah. As far as I could tell, none of the doctors had experience with a patient with this, except for the doctor, which is now my outpatient sort of specialist, who is friggin' awesome. He knew one other patient that had this condition. So most of the rest of this box is about hospital stuff. So endless things on the medication that I was on. I didn't know what it was. What is this? I think this is all about medication. I was on a lot of medication. There should be actually a brochure about the condition. Oh, this is it. NHS, amazing. Like whatever funding issues, let's fund the NHS. They do amazing work. Like, I know that there's this thing where they try and put lots of things online so that you don't actually have to go to hospitals or doctors and nurses, and that's like a money-saving thing for the NHS. But it's the documentation is amazing. So this is all about the condition that I have, which it's something that happens every now and then. It happened 6 years ago, and they didn't know what to call it. So it's really interesting that now, 6 years later, it has a name, or like it has a diagnosis. So it just makes me wonder if it happens again. Like, will it be called something different? Like, what will be different next time it happens? I don't want it to happen ever again. Mostly because scared the crap out of my partner and the people around me. Ambulance bills. Because one thing that was kind of a mistake is I was sent home the day after I was admitted with a bunch of drugs, but I was still, like, my blood was still being still not right, so I collapsed again, and a second ambulance had to be called the next day. This is a good story. I don't know if it's a good story. You be the judge. Is this it? No. It's weird sacks. Scrabble. This is Scrabble. This is a really cheap. This is probably the cheapest Scrabble you can buy. It's just like, it's not even, it's just this thin cardboard. But obviously, like, I'd lost, like, my blood was not good, and I was having trouble. And while I was in the hospital, they put me on super strong steroids, which affected me cognitively. I was having a lot of trouble just thinking about things. um, yeah, my partner was worried that there might be some brain damage or something. So even though I was in this sort of, induced fog a lot of the time, like he would come in and do little tests to see how I was doing, like ask me random questions about my studies or things he knew I was interested in. And one of the things we did was played Scrabble. And I can remember there being some very long, weird Scrabble games, because, like, I feel like I'm good at Scrabble, but maybe he's not so good at it. So it kind of evened out the fact that I wasn't in my right mind necessarily. Yeah. Scrabble as a cognitive test, which is why we have a Scrabble board now. Even though, like, I was just insistent when I got out of hospital, we need to have a Scrabble board. It's very important. It's almost as important as medication. You need to have this Scrabble board. It's like having a blood test for me, playing Scrabble. I've had a lot of blood tests now. So that's this box. I guess the only other thing which I will try and describe in the story is coming out of hospital, but then being in a state where we have this super authoritative state government that have issued these very strict guidelines for how to behave, essentially. So, like, colloquially, it's like stage 4 lockdown. That's what people are calling it. So we have 6 weeks of very strict restrictions on movement. There's curfews. There's I've had low immunity recently, so the mask thing I'm actually really thankful for. I quite like that everyone has to wear masks, even though, like, I'm struggling a bit when I wear one because I'm a hot body and condensation forms. It's really disgusting. But I also never don't want to wear a mask that isn't, proper, isn't really good material. So there was I should include this in my research actually. Let's see if I can find it. But there was a group in the UK at one of the universities who were testing out the porosity of various household materials. The outcome of which was that our tightly knitted cotton t-shirt material is actually really good for masks, or something like. It was like the top things were like cotton t-shirts and tea towels, and then they decided tea towels are actually really uncomfortable to wear around your face. So they're trying to think of household items that you could grab and make into a mask without having to go out and buy masks. So ever since then, I've been really suspicious of these, organic cotton hemp masks. I'm going to put this on. This was made by my mother. It's a very attractive mask. It's very nice. But it's also made of, like, unbleached organic cotton or something, I think. So I'm now like, is this weave tight enough? This I think is my decorative mask. I don't feel super comfortable wearing it outside. But it's very nice. It's a very nice mask. Possibly towards restrictions being lifted, I might feel a bit more comfortable wearing less sort of techie looking masks. I don't know. So I was actually going to try and write while I was talking, and that hasn't happened. But I think this has helped form the writing. So maybe I will post this anyway. The idea is like, this is a chat room, anyone can come join, but I haven't invited anyone yet, so hopefully that'll happen. If you're watching this, thanks for sticking around, and if you want to read the story that I've just been talking about, visit many-rooms.info, and the story will be called Recap. I'm going to stop recording now and actually write the thing.